Hey everyone, how's it going? Kermode here. In this video, I'm going to give you 12 Ableton features you should know. These are some features that I consider to be a little less obvious. Some of them may be obvious to you, some of them you may not have known. A couple of these I only just discovered recently, and I wanted to share them with you. So let's not waste any time, let's just get right into it. The first feature I want to show you is the ability to link tracks. This is one of the ones I didn't know about at all for some reason, and it's the ability to right-click and link a track. And now what happens is when you edit a track, they now are edited together. The loops do need to be exactly the same length. So for example, you notice at the end here how these two edit, but this one doesn't. And from the beginning, they all start at the exact same position, and this one does. It's not just fading, you can also chop, copy, paste, etc. All those types of different editing. And what I would consider this feature really good for is actually comping. So if, for example, you had a ton of vocal takes and it's all the same line, and you know where you're going to be chopping out the same breath or the same dead air, that's where this can become really useful. If the clips are the same length, you can even go in and warp things and they'll stay in time, as well as pitching things. So you really got to just play around with this one. For this next feature, we jump back to our clean loops here, and it's the ability to just insert a fade without having to manually drag the fade. If you right click, you can see this create fade in, Control-Shift-F on Mac. And you'll see when the tracks are linked, it even adds the fades for all of them. This also applies to the end, and it's really a matter of just selecting how long you want the fade to be and then inserting this fade. Notice how I didn't highlight the full range here so it doesn't insert it. You have to reach the end of the clip for this to happen. Let's jump over to a MIDI clip for this next one. So if you're ever using the pencil tool to add MIDI, you'll notice that when you click and drag, the notes follow where your mouse go. There's a couple key commands that can change this. One I really like for hats, for example, is if you hold Option on Mac or Alt on PC, you'll notice that they actually lock to the actual note that you start on. So if I were to do that again and move my mouse around, you can really see. So this is good for really quickly penciling in, again, something like a hi-hat. Now you'll notice when I penciled it in, it also penciled to the grid. You'll notice if I hold Command and I click and drag, the MIDI note will actually be as long as I drag it for. So now when I drag, instead of it just repeating to the grid, you can actually change the length of that. Pretty useful. Now for the next tip, I want to talk about unique rhythms. So in Ableton, I'm sure you're used to the fact that you can divide the grid into 2 or 3, but if you want to get a bit more interesting with the timing, let's say for example, we wanted 7 notes in here, you have the ability to warp your MIDI. So if we deleted that so we only had 7 notes, and we could stretch this, you can see that we've stretched it to the length of the clip. However, it's not actually to the length of the clip. You'll see that the warp marker started at the beginning of the last note. So what the tip is if you hold Shift, you can actually change where that warp marker is placed. So now you can actually lock that to specific notes. I don't know why by default, when you highlight all the notes, it starts at the beginning of the last note. To me, that's not very useful. So it's much easier for you to hit Shift, change that starting position, and then warp that on grid to where you need it to be. Remaining in the MIDI section here, this is probably one that most of you know, but if for whatever reason you don't, it's really important. And it's the ability to actually lock your MIDI to a specific scale. So if you head over to this part of the clip view here, and you select a scale, so for example, let's just work in A harmonic minor, you can actually see the notes that are within that scale. Or if you click the button here, then it'll actually lock your piano roll to only include notes within that scale. I'm sure most of you know that one, but if for whatever reason you didn't, it's a really important one to know. So there you go. This is one that for whatever reason I just never picked up on. Again, a lot of you might know this one, and it's the ability to quickly color everything on a track based off the track colors. So for example, we have 3 different colors here. Right click, and down here you can see the assign track colors to clips. You click that, and then all the colors just become what the track color is. Additionally, if you group your tracks and you do that with a group, everything within the group, including the tracks themselves, change color. I don't know how I never noticed that. I'm clearly quite blind. Moving over to a clip, this is something to help speed up your editing a bit. Something I always was in the habit of is when I wanted to edit a certain note, I'd have to click it before I could go ahead and use my keys to edit it. What can actually be a lot quicker is if you hold Alt and you use the arrow keys, you can actually just change what note is selected. It can really speed up workflow. Now let's say you had multiple clips at once and you wanted to use the multi-clip editing feature. If you don't even know what that is, it's when you have one clip and you hold shift and select another clip, and now you have the ability to see them simultaneously and actually edit them simultaneously. Now, if for example I wanted to add a note into the purple clip and it's dropping it into the green one, well, you have to go up here and you have to actually click and toggle which one you're working on. Now, if that's still too confusing for you, or for example, I wanted to, in the purple one, add a note here, but well, there's a green note there, and when I click it, it selects the green clip. Well, the workaround for this is if you actually hit focus mode, then you'll actually only see the notes within the clip you're working on. And this allows you to, again, add notes in areas you might not have been able to prior. And then if we click the green one, now it's in focus mode on the green one. So this focus mode is just a nice way to kind of simplify the multi-clip editing, which is very useful, but sometimes can get a bit messy. I have a bit of a bonus tip for you if you made it this far into the video. If you're ever looking for production assistance, mixing, mastering, or anything in between, I actually offer all those services. And if you want to know more information on that, you can just head down to the description of this video. Moving on to the next tip here, some of you are probably aware that within several of the effects, if you right click them, there's actually a high quality mode. What I didn't know is that Wavetable itself actually has a high quality mode. This will cause the device to use a bit more CPU, but I still think it's important we all know that it's there. So not only is it in effects such as delay, but it's also available in Wavetable. For this next feature, I'm going to take these devices, I'm going to group them, and I'm going to map a few of these to the macros. I'm sure many of you are aware that now you have the ability to change the amount of macros that you have available to you with the plus and minus. But one feature I still think that gets overlooked is the snapshot feature. The snapshot feature basically allows you to make presets of the positioning of the macros. So if you move things around and you find a combination of the effects or settings that you really like, you just hit new. That's a variation. Now we move that. New, snapshot. Now watch what happens when I hit play. It toggles between them. These are also key and MIDI mappable so that you can actually trigger them and play them. So if, for example, during a live set or while you're working on a song, you have like different vocal effects or different positions that you like, you don't have to, copy and paste a bunch of different automation lanes. You can actually record yourself triggering those to cause all these positions to change. Another feature you shouldn't forget if you're playing around with the macros is the random function. This is not only just a really amazing sound design tool because you can just randomly click things in time and get all these crazy effect combinations or instrument preset combinations, but you can also use that in combination with the snapshot feature. So you can create a new variation, find a position you like, take the snapshot, add a new one, randomize, snapshot, and it could be a really fast way to kind of create different presets if you have a really good chain, especially if you have one with all these different macros, 16 different possible effects and combinations. You're mishmashing them, finding ones you really like, taking snapshots. This feature can be just a really fun and powerful way of quickly getting ideas and getting back to them really quickly. Play around with these features in combination. Lastly, looking up at the tracks over here is just the ability to rename multiple tracks at once. If you have multiple tracks selected and you right click them and we rename track and you hit enter, I didn't know you could rename all of them. Not only that, but let's say you have a rack like this one here. Let's say, for example, I wanted to rename all these different chains here. Now, unfortunately, you can't rename them all in this view. But if you go on over to session view and you open it up, now we can take all of them. Right click, rename, drum, enter, boom. They're all renamed right there. So if you made it to the end of this video, I hope that you found a tip or trick in there that you didn't know. Maybe share it with a friend. I'm sure they'll get something good out of this video. And once again, I'm Kermody, and I'll be back with a new video very soon. Peace.